myself being a scientist again, just for a few hours. I've been one all my life, but to see how things have come on in the last, 20 or 30, it was wonderful. And I talked to people I talked to lots of people, and they're all holding on to the importance of science. And I have seen so many changes. In 1947, we had the hottest summer and the coldest winter in one year. And those things make me question the idea that just people could screw the climate of the world up. If we wanted to double the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, we would have to burn all the known oil, all the known gas, and 1/3 of the coal, and we couldn't do it. We'd have to bring Arthur Scargill back to dig it up. We've just had the worst winter since 1963, and it's a cycle. Well, I believe it's a cycle. So hooray for the cycles of natural climate change. The soils of the world have to produce 18 billion meals every day. And if science doesn't get their act together, how are we going to do that? And that to me is the number one. Number two is, of course, that we are still chopping down rainforests, we are still clearing things for the
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe.
.3 Seaside FM. I'm Justin McCartney. With me now is Dr. David Bellamy, who's popped along to investigate the coastline here today in wonderful Withensea on the east coast of Yorkshire. The Holderness Coast is, well, it's receding due to erosion. Is that a natural process, or is it...
Oh, absolutely. If we'd been sitting here 10,000 years ago, we'd have been under ice, quite a lot of it. And, the last ice age was coming to an end, things warmed up, and people then very soon were here hunting mammoths and things like that. So it's a wonderful bit of natural history.
Now, of course, the last ice age went about 10,000 years ago, right?
Well, started to go, yeah.
Some people say we're due another ice age pretty soon then.
Well, that's what we always think, and actually the everything is pointed to that now, because we're into another solar cycle, and in 2 years and there hasn't been a single sunspot. And last time that happened, the Thames in London froze, because the only heat that we get, which keeps us warm here, comes from the sun. And you know, if you get a lot more heat from the sun, then the things melt, and when you get a bit colder, and just think of the winter we've just had, and we are, well, quite a lot of people say we are heading for another, not another ice age, but 30 years of pretty cold weather.
Some people in recent years have lampooned you a bit. You're not a great advocate of the global warming scenario that a lot of people are expounding.
Thank God for global warming, because if it hadn't warmed up 10,000 years ago, where would we have been? And you just got to look at along this coast. You see, when all the ice was on the land here, it pressed it down. And as Scotland had much more ice, Scotland went down and England come up. And since that melted, it turned. And we're still going down completely naturally, and that's why we've got a lot of erosion going on this thing. So it's not easy. Natural climate change I believe in, because I can go and look here and find the proof of that, but there is actually no real scientific proof that man has affected the rise in temperature. That is the sun which does it.
What you're saying is the Earth's ecosystem is so powerful that it can cope with 99.9% of things that it's throwing at it.
Well, I would have thought so. And when you think that the temperature has only gone up 0.7 of a degree centigrade, and if I walked outside that, if the sun goes behind the clouds, it gets colder, and if it come out, as it just popped out, and it got warmer. So it is natural things. And as Obama last week turned around and said, look, we haven't got this straight, and we have got to sort it out and find out what is really happening before we waste billions of pounds on solving a problem which perhaps isn't there.
Yes, it's strange to me that previous governments, if you remember back to a couple of hundred years ago, they used to have a window tax for having windows in your house, and now we have like carbon tax to offset your carbon footprint. It seems to me it's a very convenient way of making an awful lot of money out of many sort of people.
And they are selling carbon, and who owns it? We own the thing. And if we actually wanted to double the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere, we'd have to burn all the known gas, all the known oil, and 1/3 of all the coal in the world. And that would only put the temperature up by 2 degrees centigrade. If we'd have been sitting here in the medieval times, it was warmer. If we had been sitting here in the times of the Romans, it was 3 to 5. So it's a load of codswallop.
Another aspect that they always talk about is the fact that there isn't enough resources on the planet to feed everybody. And this is a thing I find rather curious, because in this country we already waste an incredible amount of food. In North America they waste an incredible amount of food. We're all fat. We could all do with eating less. So I find it a bit strange to say that there isn't enough food to go round whenever there's so many things that say, well, the population's growing, there must be enough food to feed all these people.
Well, we certainly can feed the number of people you've got, but a lot of people don't have access to that feed. And more of the people in the developing countries are now turning around and saying, come on, we have got to cut back on the number of people, because not only do they want food, but they want the resources. And do we want a world full of 9.1 million people? And that seems to all the scientists say that's what we'll get up to. Can we actually do we want to live in a world with that many people?
It would be rather crowded in certain parts of the world with 9.1 billion people.
Well, I mean, Britain now is the second most populated thing in the EU.
Yes.
And, you know, and we don't feed ourselves. Much of our food comes from Africa and places like that. And another thing, we are seeing more and more coal mines being reopened in Fife to back up things like you know, wind turbines. And we haven't got it. And all we're doing to all round and round. And Obama, I think, was very, very brave saying that last week, that perhaps we should look at this and get the facts right before we waste all that money.
It's all very well. It is going to cost a lot of money to invest in these new technologies, and quite often the cost of production of these new technologies is more than the benefits that you get out of them. But surely there's a case for us all being more efficient anyway, and getting our food from closer to home anyway, rather than getting it from Africa.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you think that when I was a kid in London, in the war, I heard Winston Churchill say that we must keep the sea lanes open. And why, I asked my dad, because we haven't been able to feed ourselves since the First World War. So we are living on imports. And back in those days, if the Germans had closed down, we were all starved. And when you think that America now produces probably a third of all the grub which is you know, produced in the world, and they're running out of water. And for, even if you're the best farmer in the world, you can't make food crops if you actually don't have the weather for it. And we've just had, well, the BBC have the last 4 years promised a hot, dry you know, years, and it hasn't happened yet. And I'm looking out there, and we've just had a rain, and thank goodness the farmers have got their crops in, and they're all smiling. But without water, they can't do it.
Okay. Dr. David Bellamy, thank you very much for talking to us today on 105.3 Seaside FM.
Thank you for having me, and I'm going out in the sun.
Because we didn't go there, and that's the way it happened. And if it didn't happen, it's nice to know why it didn't happen, so in the future, if we want to keep doing something, we need to know why something stopped in the past that we wanted to keep it going.
I've got one that can see.